The shorthanded Tigers pound Baylor. So what did we learn? And what can we look ahead to for 2025? Let's talk about it. Locked on LSU, your team every day.
You are Locked On LSU, your daily podcast on the LSU Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Okay, let's get it. It is Locked on LSU, your team every day. I'm your host, Matt Moscona. Thanks so much for making us your first listen. We're free, available wherever you get podcasts, of course, on YouTube as well. So please subscribe. Let me be the latest, if not the first, to wish you a very, very happy and prosperous and safe new year. Tigers finish off 2024 with a bang. LSU beats Baylor 44-31. And if you're an everydayer, you know, I picked Baylor to win this game. And it was largely due to the fact that Baylor's offense had been pretty good this year. And Baylor's offense was pretty good for the most part against LSU. Baylor put up 507 yards of offense. Let me say that again. Baylor put up 507 yards of offense and 31 points. But the LSU defense made some timely stops. You got a defensive score. You got a special team score. That had not happened in a bowl game, by the way, for LSU since the 1995 Independence Bowl, when the great Eddie Kennison returned a kickoff for a touchdown, and the great Gabe Northern had a defensive score in that game as well. So nearly 30 years since you've seen that combination for LSU. And that helped pace LSU. The Tigers did put up 418 yards of offense. Garrett Nussmeier goes over 300 yards passing, 3 touchdowns. He becomes just the second quarterback in LSU history to throw for 4,000 yards in the season. Only the great Joe Burrow surpassed him, meaning Garrett Nussmeier surpassed what Jaden Daniels did in his Heisman season a year ago, throwing the football. What a great springboard into 2025. Listen, I'm not going to overreact to the win. It is far better to go into your offseason winning your bowl game than losing it. For example, people in Tuscaloosa today ain't too happy. They were a 16-point favorite and lost to Michigan, a Michigan team that was down 8 defensive starters that had opted out. A&M was up 17 on USC in the second half, blew it. Not too great in Aggie land today going into the offseason with that L. South Carolina, a lot of Gamecock fans whining, moaning, complaining about not getting in the playoff. They went and lost to Illinois in their bowl game. So I'm just not, listen, it's way better, obviously, to have the feel good in your belly going into the offseason, win as opposed to a loss. But if I asked you who won the Texas Bowl a year ago, could you tell me? I have no idea. None. No idea whatsoever. I've seen LSU teams play really well in bowl games. 2015, LSU won the Texas Bowl. Blew out Patrick Mahomes and Texas Tech. Opened up 2016 with a loss at Lambeau against Wisconsin. Fired Les Miles a few weeks later. LSU in 2002 under Nick Saban. Lost the Cotton Bowl. Finished 8-5. Won the national championship the next year. Point is, I'm not going to oversell you on the result. It was a fun day. It was a fun day, and I would say more than anything, it was exciting to see some of the takeaways from this game, which I'll get to here in just a quick second. The standouts, the takeaways, but the game itself couldn't have started any better. LSU gets the opening kickoff. They go right down the field on a 12-play drive and score on Trey'Dez Green's first touchdown. 12 plays, 68 yards. Tigers are up 7-0. And then, boom, Devon Keys with a pick six. You're up 14-0. How about Devon Keys, who really accelerated in the final month of the season? 5 tackles for this game. He did have the interception, also had a pass breakup in the game. So good to see Devon Keys playing well, and they needed it, of course, when Whit Weeks went out of the ballgame. We'll talk about Whit's injury coming up in a bit. So Tigers are up 14-0. Looks like they're off and running. Baylor would punt, LSU would 3 and out. Baylor would score to bring it within 14-7. And just when it looked like Baylor might be creeping into this game, it's 14-7. Tigers are facing a 3rd and 2. This is the LSU's first drive of the second quarter. Trades Green for 14 yards. The very next play, Aaron Anderson on the left sideline for 20 yards. That was the play where Nussmeier was pressured. Looked like he was throwing it away, but Anderson, beautiful play to just drag his feet, fall out of bounds, and make the reception. And then the next play after that, Chris Hilton, the deep touchdown down the right sideline. So you went from 14-7, looking like you're going 3 and out, to boom, Trades Green, boom, Aaron Anderson, boom, Chris Hilton. And just like that, you're up 21-7. And on the next drive, Devon Keys on 3rd and 1 came up with the big stuff, the run stuff, to force a 3 and out. Tigers would get it. They'd score again. This was the drive where it looked like Hilton had another touchdown. They ruled him just short of the goal line. Trades would score. You're up 28-7. The Tigers, it never really felt like they were threatened again. You did have a field goal blocked at the end of the first half, which was disappointing. You allowed Baylor to score to bring it within 28-14, and that was where Whit Weeks was injured. But the ensuing kickoff, here goes Xavion Thomas. Boom, 95 yards for a touchdown. You're up 34-14. Yes, Baylor would get a field goal before half, but you're up 17 at halftime. And the only time that it really was challenged, listen, if we're talking about the game itself, which I don't know, the nature of the game will probably be lost over time, but Dave Aranda screwed the pooch here. There were 3 times he went forward on 4th down, and all 3 times were a bad decision. And I don't say that all 3 times were a bad decision because they didn't make it. I mean it because and Baylor was 1 of 6 on 4th down, by the way. Some of those were out of necessity at the end of the game. But look at situations like at the first drive of the second half. LSU's up 17. Baylor gets the ball. They drive right down the field. They've got a 4th and goal or 4th and 5. They go for it. They throw a ball. Looks like it's a touchdown. It's ruled a touchdown. They review it on the back line. Ruled that the receiver's foot was out of bounds. No points right there. The very next drive, LSU has the long pass to Aaron Anderson where he fumbles, and Baylor would score. So it's a 10-point game. But think, what if Baylor had kicked the field goal there? Then it's a 1-score game. The point is in this ball game, and then, by the way, after Baylor scores to make it 34-24, that's when Nussmeier throws the interception. So now all of a sudden, after LSU, follow me here, to start the game defensively, LSU goes pick 6, punt, allowed a touchdown, punt, turnover on downs. They'd scored once in their first 5 possessions. You actually had a pick 6. After that, they go touchdown, field goal, turnover on downs, which was darn near the touchdown, which we just talked about, then another touchdown, where it would have been 4 consecutive scoring drives, but for an inch that the guy was on the back line. You're not getting stops anymore. So it doesn't feel really great. So they're now within 10. Nussmeier throws a bad interception. Baylor set up in good field position at the LSU 26-yard line. They go forward on 4th and 1. Bad snap, which loses 40 yards. LSU a couple of plays later scores. It's 41-24. But the point is, if Dave Aranda kicks field goals in those 2 spots, you're talking about a game that's inside of a touchdown. So I know you can't assume all else is equal, but the point is, points, I say it all the time, points change the dynamic. It changes every conversation. Look at the bowl game with Alabama and Michigan. If you want something that's not related to LSU, at the end of that ball game, man, look at the beginning. Michigan kept getting turnovers and they kept kicking field goals, but Sharon Moore was heady enough to take the points. At the end of the game, Alabama's down 10. Instead of kicking a field goal to make it a 1-score game, they go for it, don't get it. Michigan goes, kicks a field goal, Bama would score, but again, it made it a 9-point game. Or Michigan went and scored, made it a 9-point game. So the point is, like, at the end of the game when Bama was down 6, they needed a touchdown, where if they had kicked a field goal, they'd have been down 3. And they would have only needed a field goal to tie and force overtime. Points change the dynamic of the game. So Dave Aranda screwed the pooch in that situation. It was to LSU's benefit. LSU, I think, would have won the game anyway. But Josh Williams scores on the first play of the fourth quarter. LSU's up 41-24. And quite honestly, the fourth quarter at that point was emptying the bench. It was a hodgepodge, a mismatch. LSU kicked a field goal. Baylor did get a late touchdown. And ultimately, the Tigers were able to get a stop and run up the clock. We saw a lot of young guys play, and LSU wins the ball game 44-31. So who were the standouts, and what did we learn about this game, this team coming off of this game? I have a lot of takeaways, and we'll get to that as we continue. Locked on LSU, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by GameTime. All right, y'all. Well, unfortunately, the LSU football season is over, but attending the new 12-team college football playoff, an incredible experience. It brings fans together like never before. Like, we can all remember the excitement of past playoff games. I was fortunate enough to be there in the Peach Bowl when LSU blew out Oklahoma, or the national championship game whenever they beat Clemson. You can remember the excitement of those games. And if you want to make new memories with the updated format and extra teams involved, you can do it. GameTime has a new feature called GameTime Picks that makes getting tickets for events even easier. It filters out the fluff. It shows you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Listen, recently I used GameTime Picks for the Sugar Bowl, New Orleans. It's Georgia against Notre Dame. If you want to be in that number, you could do the same. Browsing through deals is a breeze. You can find great value, all kinds of seats all around the venue. The super deal in particular stands out as the best value for the event. So you could see the seats, the views before you even buy. The app shows you total cost up front with no surprise fees at checkout. The on-time ticket delivery and the lowest price guarantee gives you complete peace of mind. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with GameTime. Download the GameTime app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem with the code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download GameTime today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. So LSU beats Baylor 44-31. I want to talk about some of the standouts, and I want to start with really the positions that we were looking at going into the game. And, you know, while, yes, you want to win the game, the truth is the result, while you have this great feel-good in your belly after the win, the result is less consequential than what we learned. And as I've been very consistent with this, the greatest benefit of bowl games in this era are the dozen practices. Look, DJ Pickett and Harlem Berry and Damian Shanklin all got to practice with LSU. A guy like Tyree Adams got to have a dozen practices as your starting left tackle and go play a game as your starting left tackle. Paul Mabenga got another game, more reps for LSU as the left guard. We got to see Cohen Eccles, and we got to see Weston Davis, and we got to see Deshaun Spears, and we got to see more of Devon Keys. We got to see so much of these young guys. There was a sequence, as a matter of fact, I wrote it down. It was after LSU went 41-24, so this was the first defensive series in the fourth quarter. Your defensive line your ends were Gabe Relaford and Dylan Carpenter. Your defensive tackles were Sean Washington and Ahmad Bro. I mean, we got to see so much of the young guys in this game get their opportunity. So, you know, who were the standouts and what were the takeaways? First and foremost, I want to start with Chris Hilton. Chris Hilton, with the way he played over the last month, in my opinion, validated all of the conversation we had about Chris Hilton, because I know a lot of fans got to the point where when Chris got hurt at the end of fall camp, and we talked about, would he be available? When would he be available? Will he, won't he? He dressed against UCLA, but didn't play, then didn't dress the next couple of weeks. Like, a lot of people wondered why. Well, in the last three games, you've seen why. Touchdown against Vanderbilt, 2 touchdowns against Oklahoma, 100 yards, 113 yards receiving the first half against Baylor in the bowl game. You see it. Brian Kelly said it point blank. Chris Hilton brings that dimension of the offense, the stretch the field dimension, which you didn't have and you lacked all year. And you saw it. Because when that threat is there, the ability to take the top off a defense, and a defense has to respect it, it just changes the math defensively. So Chris Hilton goes over 100 yards receiving in the first half a touchdown, was about a half a yard away from another touchdown, but a great adjustment to the ball while he was interfered with, coming down with that ball. Great job by Chris Hilton. And when you think about going into next year, when you're bringing in Nick Anderson, you're bringing in Berrien Brown, you're bringing back Aaron Anderson, you're bringing back Chris Hilton, and oh, by the way, Travis Green, and we're going to talk about it in just a second. You look at those receivers and you think, man, if Nussmeier was worried about who he's going to throw to, losing 3 of his top 4 pass catchers, I think a game like this alleviates that a good bit. Speaking of Travis Green, of course, Travis Green was a great red zone threat for you this year, but it was so much more than just the red zone. Travis did catch the first touchdown of the game, but before he caught the first touchdown, on LSU's opening possession of the ball game, they faced a 4th and 5. LSU had a 4th and 5 from the 31-yard line, from the Baylor 31. And instead of kicking a 48-yard field goal, they go for it on 4th and 5 from the Baylor 31. Travis, 6 yards over the middle, first down. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 plays later, Travis Green's in the end zone with a touchdown, capping off that opening drive. Not just that 4th and 5, but there was also a major play. It was the sequence we talked about. Baylor scored to make it 14-7. It's early second quarter. LSU's facing a 3rd and 2. Travis Green, 12 yards. The little drag route they ran across the formation, caught on the right side, went up the right sideline, got 12 yards. The next play was the Aaron Anderson play on the sideline. The next play was the Chris Hilton touchdown. So you went from 14-7, thinking you're going 3 and out, to Travis converts, to Aaron for 20, to touchdown, boom, you're back up 14. Travis Green was awesome. Of course, caught another touchdown on 3rd and goal from the 1. They would put up LSU up 28-7. We wondered, how are you going to replace the production of Mason Taylor? And Travis Green, 6 catches, 53 yards, 2 touchdowns, a long of 21. We all sort of saw it in this game. When the deck is cleared and you can draw up an offense for Travis Green, yes. 6'7", attached as an F-back, as an H-back, as a slot receiver. No matter where they put him, he executed, he delivered, he performed for this LSU offense, and that was fantastic to see. I got to talk about the offensive line as well. The offensive line was maligned this year, and a lot of it was unfair because they were elite pass blockers. And you can roll your eyes and shrug your shoulders, but the bottom line is they were elite. They just came with tremendous expectation. They were elite pass blockers. Now, they struggled to run block objectively. I think we'd all agree on that. And maybe that was an illustration of how much Jaden Daniels made up for their inability to run block a year ago or the last 2 years. But they were great pass blockers. All the numbers bear that out. So you lose Will Campbell and Emory Jones and Garrett Dellinger. Your weak link was DJ Chester. He's the only starter in his spot. You put Paul Mabenga at left guard. You got Tyree Adams starting at right tackle. You move Miles Frazier out to right tackle. You got Bo Bordelon starting at right guard. You play Eccles. You play Davis. You play all these different guys. And over the course of 60 minutes, that offensive line was awesome. Baylor did not sack Garrett Nussmeier. They had a total of 3 tackles for loss for a total of -3 yards. So it wasn't like they were giant TFLs. It was just running plays where you tackled behind the line for loss. And they hurried Garrett Nussmeier twice. 2 hurries. And one of the hurries netted the 20-yard completion to Aaron Anderson on the sideline. That offensive line was awesome. Now, Baylor defensively was very bad this year. It's not like you were going up against the Ole Miss front, the A&M front, the Alabama front, the South Carolina front. Baylor's very bad. But that was Baylor's first string defense. Baylor had 1 opt-out on the defense, and it was a safety. That defensive front 7 was Baylor's starting defensive front 7, and your crew of backups dominated them. A great sign for next year, where you've already got Braylon Moore coming in to be your starting center. You've got Josh Thompson coming in from Northwestern, who's likely going to be a starting guard or maybe a tackle for you next year. And you might go at another starter. And on top of that, Tyree Adams could be your starting left tackle. DJ Chester could be a starting guard for you. Paul Mabenga played a lot. I mean, Weston Davis, Cohen Eccles. Davis was a 5-star. All of a sudden, you feel really good about the young talent and depth that you have on that offensive line for next year because you saw them do it. Again, I'm not trying to oversell the importance of the result of a bowl game, but it's one thing to watch guys go perform in a spring game against their own in a controlled environment. It's another to go watch a game where it's on TV and there's fans in the stands and there's real refs and there's a team in another uniform and you're playing a real game. And to see him perform the way they did was awesome. Hat tip also to Devon Keys. Devon Keys with the pick 6. We mentioned the big run stuff on a 3rd and 1, which forced a punt on Baylor's second offensive possession, which allowed LSU to get the ball back and go up. It was Baylor's 3rd offensive possession, which allowed LSU to get the ball back, go up 28-7. We're 20 minutes into the show, and I haven't mentioned the Whit Weeks injury, and maybe that's probably where we should have led. Perhaps I'm burying the lead. The good news, obviously, with Whit, it seems like it was just a dislocation. I guess we'll get more information when they do imaging and everything, but I say just a dislocation. There was video of them popping the ankle back in. But Brian Kelly said at postgame, and they hope to have Whit Weeks back for spring football. I mean, spring football you're talking about is just about 3 months away. So, over the next 12 weeks or so, Whit needs surgery for that dislocation, and he rehabs it. He could be back out there. That's fantastic. But I don't really need Whit Weeks out there for spring. I just need Whit Weeks back out there for. I need Whit Weeks out there for August 30th against Clemson. That's all I really need. We know what Whit Weeks can do, but with Whit not out there, we got to see more of West Weeks. We got to see Tylen Singleton play. We got to see Greg Penn go in his final game and play well. And while LSU defensively allowed 507 yards of total offense and 31 points, there were times they needed big stops, and they came up with big stops, and they got them. So, by and large, LSU lived by the mantra they have all year: bend, don't break. You allow big plays, but you make big plays as well. And that Tiger defense made enough plays to win. Again, you got a defensive touchdown, you got a special teams touchdown, and the offense put up over 400 yards, and it all added up to LSU beating Baylor 44-31 to polish off the 2024 season with a win. Tigers finish 9-4 on the season. Now they look ahead to 2025. So let's do the same. Let's look ahead to 2025 as we continue to wrap up today's episode of Locked On LSU, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL playoffs are almost here, but it's not too late to get in on the regular season action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now, new customers can finish the season strong with $250 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. FanDuel has so many ways for you to pick up a W. If you love to bet on player props like which player will score a touchdown, how many points each team will score, it's thrilling, it's so much fun, and it's there for you at FanDuel. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your chance at $250 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. As we look ahead to 2025, boy, there's a lot of reason for optimism, isn't there? I like everyone else, am disappointed with how the 2024 season played out. This was a team in year 3 under Brian Kelly where many, myself included, thought this could be the springboard year, because we've seen that everywhere he's been. Brian Kelly talked about it. But it just became very clear that the strategy in this new era, they missed. They added 9 portal transfers for the 2024 season, and unfortunately, they weren't impact guys. And it's very clear over the last month that they've adjusted that. And while they're not going to go add 30 guys in the portal, like Ole Miss did a year ago, 26 or whatever the number was, they're going to add more than 9. They're at 14 at this very moment, with likely 2 more coming. And they're impact guys. No less than 7 immediate starters have already been added of the 14. And I think you have 2 more coming. That's 9, I think, day one starters out of the portal. If that's the case, that's nearly half of your starting lineup next year. But you add those impact guys on top of the young talent that clearly you're building, as evidenced by what we saw against Baylor with a lot of young guys getting out there and making plays. And there's a lot of reason for optimism going into 2025. I've been asked by a good number of people, is it championship or bust in 2025? I don't know that I can definitively say they got to win the national championship, but they got to make the playoff. You look at this team in 2024, and the reality is, you were tied with USC until 8 seconds to go in that ball game. Could have won it. Probably should have won it. You were up 10 on the road against Texas A&M in the third quarter, and you threw up on yourself and blew it. Could have won. Probably should have won. You went on the road to Gainesville and controlled the ball for 42 minutes and lost. You had a touchdown taken off the board. I mean, C.J. Daniels caught that slant. They called Kyron Lacy for offensive pass interference. I mean, that right there probably wins you the game. There's 3 games right there. In an 8-4 season, that's 3 games that if they go your way, could have been 11-1. The only game where you were outclassed totally was the Alabama game. But there's also a flip side to that, which is, you could have lost to Ole Miss. Maybe should have. They had their opportunity. They had their opportunities to put you away and didn't do it. Those games also exist where you feel like you escaped. South Carolina. I mean, but for a poorly timed blindside block after an interception, which would have led to a pick 6, if the defender just walls off Nussmeier instead of annihilating him, South Carolina wins that game. So you were a breath away from being 6-6 as well. So it works both ways. But you are what your record says you are. And LSU is 9-4. And as I look ahead to next year, I look at a schedule that feels manageable. I look at LSU returning what I think is the best quarterback in the SEC. Now we'll see what Quinn Ewers elects to do. Carson Beck is declared for the draft. We'll see what happens with the rest of the portal. But it feels like you'll have the best quarterback in the SEC to start next season. You've got what already feels like the best transfer portal class, a top 10 recruiting class on top of that, and a roster returning that includes guys like Whit Weeks and Dominic McKinley and Deshaun Spears and Ashton Stamps, who played so well in this ballgame in particular, and the offensive line who we detailed, and guys like Aaron Anderson and Xavion Thomas and Chris Hilton and Trey'Dez Green, and my goodness, we haven't even talked about Caden Durham returning. And then you're adding the top 10 class that has DJ Pickett, the number 1 cornerback, and Harlan Berry, the number 1 running back. And all of a sudden you can look and go, yeah, this should be a playoff team. What I can't say definitively is that they're a national championship team, because what we don't know is what any type of draw would look like. Take, for example, Penn State and Oregon. At the time I recorded this, Penn State just polished off a drubbing of Boise State. Penn State got a total walk in the college football playoff. They got to play a home game against SMU, and they got to play Boise. Now they'll play the winner of Notre Dame and Georgia, and Georgia's got a backup quarterback, and Notre Dame can't throw the ball. Penn State's got a breeze of a path. Oregon has probably been the most consistent team in college football all year, got a bye, and now they get to play Ohio State, a team they already beat. Now Ohio State gets a rematch. Oregon may bow out in the quarterfinals because they got a terrible draw. So much of your ability to advance in a playoff does depend on your draw and how it all plays out. So while it's impossible for me to sit here today and predict LSU to win a national championship, what I will say is if LSU isn't in the college football playoff in 2025, the 2025 season, it will be a massive failure, because you have every ingredient you need. You've got a manageable schedule. You got a veteran quarterback. You've got a talented roster of returning players, and you're adding maybe the best transfer class in college football. If LSU doesn't make the playoff next year, it would feel a lot like Ole Miss not making the playoff this year with arguably the best roster in college football. So that pressure is there for Brian Kelly, but it's something that he embraced when he took this job. What we do know definitively is LSU will go into the offseason with a feel good in the belly and a dynamic last month with a top 10 recruiting class, a top transfer portal class, a bowl win, Garrett Nussmeier returning, and a lot of expectation for the 2025 LSU Tigers, who polished off the 2024 season and the 2024 calendar year with a drubbing of Dave Aranda and the Baylor Bears 44-31. Hey, thanks so much for being here with us. If you're new, thank you for finding us. Hey, make us part of your day every day. Become an everydayer in 2025. If you're on podcast, subscribe on your favorite podcast app. Rate us, leave a review. If you're on YouTube, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell so you're notified whenever we post a new video. And let a friend know that if they love the Tigers, we got you here every single day for Locked on LSU, your team every day.